This seminar is called Drive People Crazy, and I've been building brands for companies for over 15 years. And I've also been doing seminars and writing about brands for the past 5 years. And I found, can you turn the volume up? Is it hard to hear, Tara? Okay. And I found that basically all these experts and there are a lot of blogs, there are a lot of seminars, a lot of books that tell you how to build a personal brand. And what they do is they tell you that you should write your own blog, you should get a Twitter account, you should get a Facebook account, you should write a book, you should do something on LinkedIn. And the thing is that you can do all that, but when you actually sit there and you're in front of your desk or you're in front of everyone, what are you supposed to write about? And I think that's what really paralyzes people is like, what is my identity? How do I self-identify? And what am I supposed to communicate? What conversations can I have with my audience? And so that's really what sets this apart. So you're really going to learn a lot today, I hope. I'm going to have a survey that I'm going to email you guys. This is a new format for me. So I'm really curious to hear what you thought was successful or really like what things didn't resonate for you. Hopefully everything resonates. The hashtag for this event is Drive People Crazy. So if you want to tweet and take pictures of the whiskey and selfies or whatever, I don't know. And I wanted to thank Maki Shop and Black Whiskey for donating their yummy food and whiskey. And I also wanted to thank Amanda at 1776 because she's awesome. So I wanted to know who's in the room today. Basically, this is for startups and people who have a job maybe and they want to really elevate their career. So who's a startup here? And then who is working and wants to elevate their career? Okay, great. That's perfect. So kind of like half and half. And how many of you are already on social media? Consistently? Like every single day? Okay. Okay, great. So we're going to, in order for you to get a lot out of Drive People Crazy, I really want to talk to you about what personal brand is, why it's important, how to create one, which is what we're going to spend a lot of time on, and how to grow that personal brand. So it's really interesting. When I first started nurturing my own personal brand, it was around 2008. And, you know, I was Alona with my friends and my family. And there was an Alona that I was at pitches and in my business world. And when I was trying to figure out how do I create a personal brand that unifies that, I was very conflicted. And I was fortunate enough to be in an office building where I met this woman. Her name was Donna, and she was an HR generalist. And she was really explaining to me that, okay, well, you don't have to be one or the other, right? You can unify this identity. And basically, your personal brand is a unification of who you are and what you do. And it basically, that unified message carries into how you communicate with your audience. So it's also, it doesn't have to be a mask, right? So we think that when we're in the business world or with our friends, there is a conflict and we think we need to separate, but we don't, you know? And I think that what I want to sort of communicate to you today and what we're going to workshop today is how to create this unified message and show you that it doesn't have to be a mask. You don't have to zip into it every single day. And that's really, really important. So I think another thing that people struggle with here is time, right? We have building a personal brand takes so much time. But I like to say we all have the same amount of time, the same amount of hours in the day as Beyonce, right? And so, you know, I think that's the thing that we need to really understand is that we have to take the time. And I think today when I show you, I'll give you the foundations, the rudiments of how to build your personal brand, you will be able to have a foundation in order to be able to create an editorial calendar that you can carry out through the rest of the year. And I think that's really important too. So I have these, we start off with 3 magic words, and that's how you start building a personal brand. And I chose out of a hat two people to workshop today. And so I want to introduce quickly, Mark is on his way. He went to the Crystal City in the 1776 in Crystal City. But we have Farah here, and Farah, if you just want to, in a minute, just sort of tell everyone what it is that you do, what your company does. And
Hi, everyone. My name is Farah Bernash, and I am the founder of Electric Feel. And I've developed a proprietary portable electric vehicle charger. So it allows electric vehicle owners to charge untethered to a wall or to a utility company.
Perfect. So, woo! So I did have a chance to speak to Mark and Farah before tonight. Just so you know that this process I'm going to be taking you through today is things I go through with clients, and it takes months, right? So this is just a foundation, and what we're going to be workshopping Farah and Mark's brand today, but it's by no means like a final message or final positioning or final anything, but it really just shows you how it is that a brand thought leader goes through this exercise and what they do for their clients. So I spoke to Farah for like 15 minutes, and I didn't want to spend too much time on the phone with her because I wanted it to be sort of more fun when we're here. But when I spoke to her on the phone, I asked her what 3 words could be used to describe her, and I asked the same thing to Mark. And it was really interesting because they both started talking about their business. Like they couldn't talk about who they were as a person. It was very, very interesting. And so I guess it made me think how hard it is for you to look at yourself and identify what your 3 magic words are. And it's really important. There's a worksheet also if you guys want to do this on your own while I'm doing it, but I'll give you time in a second. But when I spoke to Farah, and you can correct me, Farah, anytime, but Farah started this company, and she doesn't have a background in engineering, right? She doesn't have a background in cars. She just is very passionate about electric vehicles. That was really important to her. And so she just decided that that's what she wanted to do. And so I think right away, the first thing that I thought about was how resourceful this person is, right? And I think that's like the first word that I want to talk about for her is resourceful. The second thing that came to mind was passionate. And then, I spoke to her a little bit more, and I think the last thing I want to really maybe courageous. So these are really 3 words that are uniquely yours, and I use 3, and that's kind of like when I build brands, when I help companies and build their brand, I really always use 3 key messages, 3 positioning statements. It's just the number 3 is really important because 2 is not enough to set yourself apart. So there's 3 things that really make you unique and make you who you are. And that combination of those 3 things becomes your positioning statement. The thing is that we also have to consider what our business is about too, right? Because we're gonna merge these 2 together, right? So, you know, let's think about Farah, your business. Like if you think about 3 words that can describe your business, what do you think that those words would be?
The first one is innovative.
Okay. I think I'll meet up here. So I also think what I thought was really interesting about your business is that basically, from what I understood, the government and the cities were working together to put these charging stations, but they weren't talking to people. So I think there's something very human about your company, right? Like you are, there's something important about design, right? Like, so human design in that way, right? Like to make sure that things are where they're supposed to be for human beings. So
yeah, user experience is the number 1 thing for my product. So I purposely designed it so it doesn't look like something you go camping with. It's literally a product people can carry around with them and use easily.
So let's put well designed. How about that? And a third thing. Can you think of anything else?
I don't know if forward thinking is the same thing as innovative.
I think it would be the same. I think it would be very similar. I think that so innovative, well designed, and I think portable is I think that is good, although that's a feature, right? That's a product, that would be a product feature. I'm sort of trying to get to the essence of what electric feel is about, right? What it stands for. Environmentally conscious. I think that's it. Because there are a lot of companies that are doing a lot of things, and not all of them are necessarily environmentally conscious. So, well, because it's electric. So Mark's not here, but I'm trying to figure out if I should do this in his absence, and then when he gets here, because he should be here any second. But I'll see how it goes with as Mark the Ghost, okay? But Mark has a consulting firm right now, and he basically in his whole career has been a political operative in campaigns, and so right now he's launched his own consulting firm. And so this is, you know, I have Farah here who's more of a startup, and then I chose Mark because his is really not necessarily a startup, but more of someone who really loves what they do and is involved in a more corporate environment. And so I really wanted to sort of show the 2 different points of view. So Mark basically his whole life has been helping nonprofits, and he was inspired by his mother, who found, I guess she found, maybe he'll tell you, but she found out that someone was like illegally being sent back from Russia or something, and so his mother like did a whole campaign, or his aunt did a whole campaign to the city and petition, and this family ended up coming back to the United States. So he was very much he became very passionate about helping people and making change, and using the government to do that. And so when I asked Mark, it was very interesting. I said, Mark, can you give me 3 words to describe you? And again, like Farah, he started talking about his business. So when I thought about 3 words to describe him, I was asking him, and this is what you can do on your own, I was asking him, what do your friends say about you, right? It was really hard to get him to sort of talk about himself. So I was really asking him, tell me about something your friends would say about you, you know? And so he was like, reliable, I'm always there, tell me something your mother says about you. And so I think that's how you can really coach yourself on figuring out what your 3 characteristics are. And so I'm going to move on because I think without Mark, it's going to be a little bit hard for me to intuit him because I didn't want to talk to him for a long time so that I could have this sort of exchange like I just had with Farah. So we're just going to move on a little bit for now. So we're going to put these words, put them in our pocket for right now, and we're going to talk about why building a brand is actually important, okay? So people trust people, not companies, and that's really, really important, right? You are investors, you're pitching them your company, you're going for an interview, you want to talk to an employer, you're always talking to people, and they are looking at you. They're not just looking at your company. And so it's really important that when companies are judging you as a person, they're trying to assess whether you're credible or not. Are you who you say you are? And I think when you build a personal brand and you're out there and you're writing and you're talking and you are, maybe it's writing a book even, you're out there, you're putting a stake in the ground, and it really makes you credible. I know that when I started to build my brand, I got a column in the Huffington Post, and I know it seems very small now, but at the time it was a really big deal. And it was during the recession, I remember, I had my own digital brand agency, and it was very interesting because before my column, it was really tough to get business. I mean, we were doing very well, but everyone, up until that time, but it took a lot of effort. And I remember after I got the column in the Huffington Post, I was starting to get asked to speak at events and to commentate on television. And at that point, if I called someone or emailed someone, or I just was always able to get a meeting. And it wasn't like that before, and I thought it was so interesting. And so I just wanted to impart to you that having a personal brand, being out there, can really change the game for you. So the other reason why personal brand is important is because obviously we're living in a world of the search engine, and that's it, right? So I call it social magnetism. People, employers, investors, whoever, they are searching online all the time. And so it would be great. You are one person, right? Remember the time factor? You don't have a lot of time. You're one person. You could create surrogates of yourself by creating content, a lot of content around things that you're passionate about, things that you care about. They will be online. They live there 24/7. And you can become involved in multiple conversations from multiple people. All different walks of life are searching for different types of information. And if you're found there, you can see how proactive personal brand can be. So another story is I also have a startup that I launched at 1776. It's called Far From Timid. And it is a lifestyle brand, and I sell products for home and fashion. It's on demand. I'm not going to go into it because that's really not the point, but I will tell you that since I've been marketing this event, my site traffic went up 3,000%. So I just, well, you know, just a little thing, and I did have, my sales did increase. But the real story I wanted to tell you was that in November, I launched in November, and I do post a lot on Twitter, and I write about once a quarter in the Huffington Post. And I do write on LinkedIn, and I was contacted by Universal Music Group, and they asked me if I would like to use any of their artists to associate with my brand. And I thought how awesome that was, because I didn't have to do any work. You know what I mean? I didn't have to work for it. And I was like, and that's what I'm trying to tell you. Like, if you create content for yourself and create surrogates in the form of content, because you can't be pitching everybody all the time. You can't go to 1 million job interviews. It's impossible. And so I just thought how great that was. And it's a really good example that I wanted to share with you of how this really can work. Anyway, so I did actually end up using one of their artists, Matthew Schuler from The Voice, and we did like this awesome influencer marketing campaign. There's Mark. Okay. Mark, you can sit up front, actually. Sorry to embarrass you. Anyway, so it was a great influencer marketing campaign. It was shot on the High Line, and it was a great, great, great partnership for both of us. So the other reason why, and this is my favorite reason why building your brand is important, because it gets you out of your bubble. And I mentor a lot of startups, and I can't tell you how many startups I ask. I mean, they've built their MVP already, and I ask them who their target audience is, and they don't know. Not only that, I ask them who their competitors are, and they don't know. And this is really important information. So I think that the best thing about building a personal brand is that you have to do research, right? So when I write my articles and I'm putting on events like this, I have to continue to do research in my industry, and it forces me to develop opinions and insights about what I really believe in. And I think that's really the most honest part about this whole thing, because you're out there and you're sharing, and you are not, I'm not saying I'm an expert in branding, but I'm telling you that I have done a lot of research, and this is where I've ended up, right? And so I think that that's really the best part, is you get to learn. So in summary, you really get out of your bubble. We are all absorbed and living in our own little vacuum, and it really helps us get out of our vacuum. You can really think about, who are you competing with? Even if you're looking for a job, what other, whatever position you're looking for, what are the other types of people that are out there? And you really can get to know exactly who they are. What other startups are out there? What are they writing about? What do they care about? And really understand that and start to really develop your own point of view. Basically that's what these 3 magic words are. You really want, and that's what you're doing when you're building a personal brand. You are trying to figure out, what are my differentiators? What makes me who I am? What makes my company who I am? And that's how we're going to develop a positioning. But before we do that, Farah, and you guys think about it too, who is your target audience, Farah? And think about not just your direct customers, but maybe your customers' customers.
So for me, it's always going to be the end user. So when I first started, a lot of people, when I was speaking to other businesses, say, hey, do this idea, there's, I'm not the customer. And they were right.
Statement is an internal message. It's not something that you put on your website, right? You'll craft that into a value proposition and a mission statement that you can put on your website or wherever in conversations, but it's really something that is for you. So what we do is when we're talking about building personal brand, you want to think about what themes that you can uncover from this positioning and from the things that we talked about. So if I'm not going to go through all of this again with both of them. This is the part of the presentation where I'm just going to continue, but basically quickly with Farah, she can talk about design, right? She can talk about well-designed things and why that's important, and user experience, why that's important. She can talk about electric cars. She can talk about innovation. You can talk about Star Trek. You can talk about a lot of things that are connected to this umbrella of thought, right? Because you don't want to be limited to just your, I do brand building and I have a lifestyle company, but I don't just want to talk about fashion and brand, right? Like, because that's not true. I can talk about a lot of things. I can talk about patterns, I can talk about music, I can talk about a lot of things. And I think that's what we're really trying to do here, is figure out the conversations that you can really own. So with Mark, I think the thing I think the things that I'd like to see you talk about and write about and communicate and engage with is, I think, there's the world of navigating the government and how difficult that is, and maybe things that we did in the world for good because there were successful cooperation between the government and the public, or government and foundations. Really understand that, really create your own perspective around that, right? I think you said that these are your subject matter expert here, and I think being able to talk about those types, that difficulty in so when I say that you can talk about how difficult it is to get around the government, but you're writing that article, you're in that universe of thought, you can really help people and talk to them. How do you get by it, right? What's your magic sauce, right? Like, how do you? And I think those are the things that you can talk about, as it relates to all those industries.
I'm just going to say real quickly, the most popular post that I have on my blog by far has been how to be heard in Congress. So it's very much like that.
I think, and I think when you think about, advocacy, talking about advocacy and what kind of support it takes to, I know that right now you're working with this client who's with the nonprofit. I think really there's so many nonprofits. I think that universe of thought and themes inside of that around the nonprofit world, right? And them navigating the government, or them trying to get funding, or whatever it is that you're doing with your client, to really talk about that and own that. Because I think what I see from you having a very impressive career, you have done a lot of things. It would be great for you to own that, right? Because I'm not saying that you have to say that you're the best and you're the expert, but you at least have to anoint yourself as someone who knows, right? And so that's really, so basically there's, I'll send this presentation, but there are different themes that you can sort of list within that support your personal positioning and your character. Another really important thing that I didn't want to forget, and I know we're running out of time, but is brand voice. Okay, brand voice is very, very important. Brand voice is basically the guidelines that you adhere to and how you present yourself to the world. Everything you write and talk about has to be in this specific tone of voice. And the way that we do that for brands is we literally have this is the document that we're using, okay? It's basically, you take your main, let's say you are, passionate, right? So one of them, your tone of voice might be passionate. But you have to talk about what you are and what you aren't. What are the guidelines, right? Like what are the limitations around that idea of being passionate? So, for example, you might say, if it is passionate, you might say, well, I'm passionate, but it's not, what's the word, like sappy, it's not, you're not going to talk about feelings and stuff like that just because you're passionate, right? So it's not emotional, but it is powerful, for example, right? So you might have a powerful voice, but it is not an emotional voice. Do you see what I'm doing there? And so being able to take, the way that you're identifying yourself with, because at this point, you have understood how you can identify yourself, I promise you. And you need to create guidelines around what that is. So very quickly, when we were doing, I branded a gay hotel, the first gay resort in New York. It was called The Out. And it was very interesting because I wanted to make sure that we didn't want that to be like very flamboyant in their tone of voice, right? Because we already looked at their positioning, right? We already knew that all their competitors already had this sort of flamboyant tone of voice. And we wanted to make sure that even though we said this is what our positioning is, we didn't want, this community manager that was doing the social media to start to use this sort of flamboyant voice. And it was very important. These documents that I'm showing you, the only way that you're actually going to be able to build your personal brand is if you have documentation, right? You have to create a workflow around this. You can't just do it in your head and then decide that you understand what your personal brand is. You actually have to do this work. You have to document it. And then as your company grows, or and some of you here want to improve your career, so it's obviously something that you'll keep for yourself, right? Do you mind waiting until the end? Thank you. So how to grow your personal brand? This is a content sandwich, okay? This has to be attributed. I did not invent this, but these are the sort of the basics, the foundation of how to grow your personal brand. Just if you're tweeting about this, just don't attribute this to me because I did not invent this graphic. And basically, if you look at, I know I'm going to be out of the thing, but this is, you have your target audience, okay, and you have your themes that we just talked about. You have your different types of content, and you have your distribution, okay? The bun is the distribution. And so that's kind of how I want you to think about growing your brand. So I'm honing into, there's a lot of ways that you can take these themes and turn them into content. You can do blogs, you can do events, you can do social media, branded content, influencer marketing, partnerships, you can write a book. What I want to just focus on really, for the next 15 minutes is I want to just talk about social media. Because social media is Occam's razor. It's really the quickest path for you generating a community in the quickest way, in the shortest amount of time. So, and you guys might already be doing a lot of this. So the first thing, we talked about our target audience, right? We don't want to forget about investors. We don't want to forget about the media also. So on your Twitter account, on your Instagram account, you want to follow those people, right? You want to create lists around the people that are in your environment. And so do you guys already do that? Are you guys already doing that? Okay. So that's really important. Creating, that's how you need to get to know these people, right? And you need to engage with them. And that's really part of the effort and the time that it takes. It's not just, when you think about building in your personal brand, a third of the content is going to be original content, right? It's going to be things that you think about that are important to you. A third of that, and this is just a rule of thumb, a third of that is going to be sort of the way, maybe you react to an article, maybe you comment on a blog. Those are also really important rules, is the rules of engagement. And then the other third is going to be, self-promotion. I just launched a new product. I have a new seminar called Drive People Crazy. So that's sort of, those are the three, that's the rule of thumb. And I think the thing that hashtag is I could teach a whole seminar on hashtags. But hashtags are like keywords, right? And they're searchable. And I think it's really important that you look at, when you're building your themes, and I'll show you when you start to build your editorial calendar, you need to look at what hashtags have the most amount, have the largest number of people that have used it, right? So, when I am doing a hashtag for Far From Timid, my company, I look at mid-century modern is a big hashtag. I hashtag art and art has 5 million posts, but it's incredible. It's incredible the engagement that you can get from a hashtag, and it's really hard to do that on Twitter, obviously, because of the character account. So, but I think it used to take me a long time to do my Twitter post because I would have to think about the hashtags, but now that I use Instagram a lot, I'm just I use like 1 or 2 hashtags on Twitter, and I leave the sort of 10 hashtags for Instagram, right? So I think, but just be very strategic in your hashtags. I can't tell you how much it helps people and helps grow your community when you use the correct hashtags. So also choosing the right platforms for you. I think that's really important. I think a lot of people are on Instagram, but maybe they don't need to be on Instagram, right? Because it's a time factor again. We don't have a lot of time. And so you have to look at what channels are going to be most effective for you and how can you differentiate yourself. There are a lot of brands that are getting on Snapchat right now because Snapchat is a big deal, but for some of you, it's not necessarily the right place for you to be because, millennials and younger, Generation Z and millennials are on Snapchat, and that might not be your audience. And I think the younger part of the millennials, right, up until age 25. And so really understanding who they are, that's why I want you to understand who your target audience is so you can choose the right platforms. And again, I'm not going to go into what you should choose for which platform, depending on who you are, because that's a whole other seminar. But I want you to understand that choosing the right platform is an important consideration in building a successful personal brand. So the editorial calendar, this is what it all comes down to. I think you have your personal brand. You know what you're talking about. You're at a networking event. You understand the different kinds of conversations you can have. You know what types of themes and topics that you can own and really talk about. And now you have to build a calendar. And you have to build a calendar because otherwise you're going to sit in front of your computer and you're going to be paralyzed. I think that's where it's also really tricky. I would say that if you built a calendar maybe a month out, that would be great. But you can see here, I have themes. This is where now, I think you saw before this, where I described to you the the different themes and the different topics that can come out of it. And now we put them in a format that gets even a little bit more specific. So we've got our themes. So for example, my theme is like I talk about, let's say the self-promotion part that I was talking about is product, right? So I think that I'm going to talk about really cool things that you can wear for the week or the season, right? So I call that style recipe. I'm going to talk about, music, for example. That's something that's really important to my personal brand and my company brand. So Biggie Smalls is really important to me. So every Monday, I'm going to create an article around Biggie Smalls, and that's what I'm going to do. It's Music Mondays, and every Monday it's going to be Biggie Smalls. Okay, so you see, are you following me there? So, so then you have to think about what kind of asset it is, and I'm really just showing you the level of specificity and organization that social media companies use in order to sort of create and build a community. It's basically this format. So you develop your asset type and then the distribution, right? Like where is it going to go? Is it going to be an Instagram image? Is it going to be Snapchat? What is it exactly is it going to be? And so I think you need to understand what that is. When you have made a list of all the possible, you can literally, like when I was working at Marriott and I launched their first editorial platform, basically the instruction was to create an editorial platform so that Marriott can be the sort of connoisseur for destinations, right? So to compete with Time Out. I literally sat in my office for like 2 days and I just came up with all the topics, right? I decided how we were going to divide the site, and I came up with all the different article types. I made sure I looked them up on Google, made sure that Condé Nast and all those other people didn't also think of that content, right? And so just need to make a list. I think the best thing to do is, in a few sittings, this is not something that you do every single day, is sit there and come up with, well, what new content am I going to come up with? Because you'll never, ever get that done. Make sense? You guys good? And this is the detail. So after you've done that, I would say that you create a 4-week calendar, okay? So basically every week, this was the calendar that I used for the influencer marketing campaign that I did for Far From Timid. But basically it's that level of specificity as far as what is the theme, what is the topic is what's the article, right? So your theme is electric vehicles or design, and then the topics are literally what am I going to call this asset? What is the title of this article? What's the title of this little, Snapchat series that I'm doing? What is this blog article titled? What is this event called? You see, so that's where themes and topic differ. What's the call to action there? Right? Like, what do I want them to do? Do I want them to link to my website? Do I want them to link to my YouTube channel? What do I want them to do? And then making sure we understand, making sure they map to our different target audiences. Okay? And so there are a lot of these calendars, and so I think it's, I've been trying to develop when I finish developing one that's, perfect for, because there's a lot of different types of calendars out there, and I think it's really a struggle because you don't want to get too specific because it becomes, it's too much work, and I think, but if you just really, what day, what's the article theme, what's the title, where do I want them to go? And making sure you understand who the target audience is, I think that's good. And I would start with a 4-week schedule. And then there's the different times to post. So I think that's really important too. And I'm not going to go through this with you, but I just want you to understand that there are really important times to post for each of your different. And you can, basically when you're when you're filling out your editorial calendar, that's also something that you can insert there. So just remember also, when you're building your personal brand, you're trying to build a community. I don't want you to be afraid to have an opinion, to get out there, to be criticized, right? I mean, that's really important. You can't be afraid, otherwise that's not really the point of building your personal brand. Not everyone likes what I have to say. Not everyone agrees with what I have to say, but I'm here and I'm doing it, right? And so I think that's really the most important thing, is you engage. We engaged in lively discussion today, and it was very fulfilling. It was very interesting, and I think that is the kind of dynamic that you want to have with your community, because we are all collaborators, right? We're living in the age of collaboration. So when you build your brand after, and you have an editorial calendar, you want to consistently also look at what people are reacting to and what they're not, right? Like, you make sure you look at your data. I remember one post for Far From Timid. I posted some quote, and I swear to God, it got like, I don't know, 600 likes in like 2 hours, and I couldn't figure out. And I thought that this other content that I created with patterns and words, I thought it was so awesome, but nobody would click on it. And I just kept posting those patterns and those words. And the thing is like, you can't, if it's not getting traffic for your audience, you need to stop posting it. I don't care how much you really like doing it. I think, because you are here to educate, inspire, and entertain your audience. That's what this is about. This is what everything is about, sharing. That's what life is about, sharing and giving. So in your personal and professional life, the whole point of creating content is to inspire, entertain, and educate. So that's it. Let's, I guess we will take some questions now. I really appreciate your patience. So thank you. Who has, okay, go ahead.
Okay, so I want to get I know you sort of have an opinion on this, but I have stated it already about not being afraid to put yourself out there and possibly get criticized. What do you say about balancing that about, let's say you're looking for a job and you might be applying to, I guess you might say, more quote traditional employers who really worry about what you are posting on social media. For example, I had a friend who's early 30s, posts on Facebook, "I'm hiring a 20-something for this job," and she posts her political opinions and just stuff she does during the day on Twitter and on Instagram, and I don't know if I should hire her. And she had 15 people jump on her like kids these days. They post so much crap on social media. They shouldn't be doing this. I jumped in to defend her, but it kind of scared me watching this, that's how some people still think that you shouldn't be posting anything potentially incriminating at all, or that
Right.
that's what you think on social media. How do you balance that?
I think the thing is that you have to be really honest about, what kind of company do you want to work for, right? I think you have to be, you are who you are. There are companies that don't care about your political leanings and doesn't matter, but you also have to really consider, do you really want to take a picture of you smoking a cigarette and holding a beer? I think, you have to, that might be who you are, but I think you do have to practice some caution and some etiquette, because you are that person without the politics. You are not your politics necessarily. You are so many other things. I don't know what it is that.
It is, but I do it for a living.
Okay, so it is your politics. So I would say that if I were you and I was very political and that is my life, I would definitely want to make sure that I'm working for a company that sees politics the same way I do, right? That's how else are you going to thrive? I mean, I think that's important. I do appreciate your question because I had, when I got recruited to work for Marriott, and that was one of the reasons why I came to DC, but those things are important to me. I know that they're a Mormon company, but it was really important that I could work for a company that I could still be myself, that I could still talk about, my boyfriends on, my articles in the Huffington Post, and they wouldn't care. I don't have to talk about my sex life, I don't have to talk about, but I wanted to make sure that I could still be myself. So I think you need to decide what your self is, right? That's the whole point, I think, of doing these exercises. What's your name? Alex, I think when you go through these exercises, I think you'll see the certain things that you actually will feel free to talk about. And when you think about your brand voice, you'll understand what those limitations are. You'll set those for yourself. But I do agree with you. I am surprised at times when I see some people who do work for companies that I see them posting stuff that I don't necessarily feel comfortable with, but I do think it's getting more and more relaxed, and I like that, but I do think you need to create boundaries. So it is a balance, but I guess what I'm saying to you is that I think if you work through some of this stuff, you'll have more clarity on what those boundaries, what that balance is, and what your boundaries are, what you're comfortable with, because you might decide that, I have a friend who works for NBC Universal, and he's a comedian. He does production or something. He's a business person inside of NBC Universal, but he's a comedian, and he has this really funny comedy troupe that he does with his friend, and he posts the most ridiculous stuff, but they're funny, there's no cursing, and there's no, you know what I mean? So I think you need to really think about what your balance is. What's your name? Hi, Erica. Hold on one second. Which one? Okay. Can you talk? Can you continue or no? No, that was all. Oh! You wanted to take a picture of it. Yeah. Okay. Here you go. This one. Okay, go ahead. Yes. What was your name again? I'm sorry.
Avi.
Avi. Mm-hmm. Okay.
So my question is that, there's something called construct validity. It's like what you're putting as a brand, you should actually know what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
And how reliable and honest you should. The reason, don't take me wrong, the reason I work for climate change.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the major challenges we see in the climate change financing projects and climate change related projects is that there is a lack of clarity what is environmentally friendly and which is not. Right? And so when you just generically apply this word environmentally friendly, but not specify how and what it is, it kind of works in a very adverse way for the whole cause of climate change.
I hear what you're saying. You and her you guys are millions of miles apart. You are did you want to say something? Let me finish this thought, and then you're in climate change, but I don't know what exactly that you do, but your world is very specific, and your target audience is very, very specific. It might even be academic right? I would say that some of your target audience is academia.
My target audience is the investor.
So investors, very, very, very niche. And so I think institutional investors. But what I'm saying to you is my consulting to her would be very different than what I would talk to you about. For her, environmentally conscious is important because we're talking about environmentally conscious design, which is a very niche market. In your world, you need to differentiate that term it's called an executional mandatory, right? So I think those are things that you know in your world that you would need to separate and specify. So we can't compare her and you and what she would talk about and what you would talk about because you're in very different universes. Does that make sense? So her environmentally conscious and is very different than how you would talk about it.
Then we are actually trying to use environment in the most loose way that would really does not make any sense. It's very generic and very obtuse up to some extent, if I say. So my challenge is, the question that I want to ask is that when you try to brand yourself, how generic you should be and how specific you should be in order to not sound like, oh, you are using this green garb to pass your, I'm not saying that's about you, to pass something, don't think, no.
Right.
You know, there's something called, I mean, I'm using this.
But I think the answer, right, and I think the answer is that no one here is, your personal brand is never environmentally conscious. You cannot, I'm not going to get up here and say, I do branding. Like, that's not my personal brand. You know, that is too generic. I'm not differentiated. Like, it's bullshit. Like, I'm not, you know, like, I don't know everything about, you know, you have to be more specific. You have to be very specific about what your point of view is in your field. Avi, you're not just climate change, you are other things. You are other things here. And that is how we craft these statements that you can really understand that level of specificity is important to you. Does that make sense? Hi, what is your name?
Hi, my name is Madhu. You know, a question. When it comes to personal branding in a traditional corporate situation, let's take I work for a healthcare company, right?
Okay.
A large healthcare company has a declared mission statement, right? To be specific or generic, if in a traditional setting, if you decide to personally brand yourself to advance your career or to be noticed, are you considered as breaking the rank? Are you considered as being self-serving and not necessarily being aligned with your company?
I think now a lot of companies, I guess there's two ways to look at it. There's some companies that that culture embraces it and they love that. They want you to have your own point of view and your own, they want you to have a personal brand. And I think the companies are looking for that, right? Because it shows passion, it shows engagement, it shows that you are interested and that you love what you're doing. So I don't think it's ever bad. I think that in the very, very corporate companies, I think the level that you, and we were talking about, you know, how you actually build your personal brand, I think you need to create boundaries around it. But I think a lot of HR, there are tons of articles on, you know, what to do with an employee celebrity, right? Like, what do you do? You know, I think as long as, you know, you are not basically using up your company time to, you know, shutting the door and, like, you know, filming yourself in your Snapchat videos, you know, for 3 hours a day. I think that that's all that matters. You know, I think it depends. I know companies like McKinsey or sort of these, I think they're becoming more and more lax about people having social media profiles because it is. I mean, that's what the world is. It's a way that we're communicating today, and I think it's amazing, right? I think that I think it connects us all. You know, I think people are really scared about the world and the violence and all this stuff, but I'm so optimistic because we are all so connected, and I think we should use it. You know. What's your name?
Nicole.
Hi, Nicole.
So thank you for this framework. I find it really insightful. So my question is, let's say that you do this, go through this process, you're publishing content, you are helping your community, at the same time you're learning to grow your community, doing this in your business. My question is, how do you then choose your technology? How do you say what you said a year ago, blog is now back to
You say, you know what? I was wrong. You just say, I was wrong. Oh my God, do you know what I learned? This is my journey. People love journey stories. It's a journey story. They love it. You know, that's how they feel connected to you and they trust you because you're honest, right? Anybody else have any questions? What's your name?
Angelique,
Hi, Angelique.
how do you continue to create original content? Because you can Google something on 17 articles about I got a meeting at event. So how am I supposed to differentiate myself from all the others? So if someone's doing the same job, how
Well, I think what's really interesting is, and I'm not trying to sound like a broken record, but once you really again, building your personal brand is about identifying who you are, what you care about, right? It's not just what is my business about, because that's your business brand. So I think that once you start to really identify what your character is, what your positioning is, like that universe of thought of the things you care about, I literally, I promise you, you will become inspired. I think right now, you're not inspired because you don't know what your personal brand is. You don't know, and it's not inspiring, and it's not fun, and it's a struggle for you to sit down every day and come up with original content. So I think the thing is that once you really understand, and again, I guess I can use this, the editorial platform, and I can use myself as an example, but this editorial platform for Marriott was called Marriott Traveler. And I knew exactly what I wanted it to be. I wanted it to be that person, that best friend, or that friend that you have that always does really cool things. And they have all these amazing stories. It's like they go to the same restaurants that you go to, or they went to Paris too, but they always have like better stories, and you can't figure out like, why do they have better stories? They always go to the underground place in the restaurant and find so I wanted this platform, this site, Marriott Traveler, to be that. And so from there, it was like really easy. It wasn't like, I didn't write an article about the 10 best places to go in New Orleans. I wrote about the 10 worst places to go in New Orleans, I didn't write about, Chicago pizza. I wrote about Second City. I think once you really identify what it is, because it's you. Don't you get inspired about the things that you love? I'm asking you to go there. I'm saying take whatever it is. If you like knitting, or take there are things in that knitting or those personal things that are important to you that you can incorporate in. We had a woman here, I don't know, Shally here? There was a woman here that I did this branding seminar, and she actually has a company here. She has like a mortgage company, and it was really interesting because we were writing about her personal statement and some of the topics that she could write about. Like, she doesn't have to just write about mortgage. What was really cool is that we sort of figured out that she was this person. She's that friend that you can be crazy around her and you can do crazy things with her, but she knows when to stop. Just before you guys get caught by the police, you know what I'm saying? So it's like you can have an adventure, but when to. It's like there's a safety around her, but it's fun, and she's also a mom, and so I thought it would be very interesting for her to talk about, and sort of maybe she could start an Ask Shally about not just mortgage stuff, but she can write about mom stuff, because moms are also her audience for mortgages, right? So if you think about your target audience, and for event planning, it's the world of hospitality. You need to think about things that merge what you care about and what they care about, and it's not just about top 10 places to go, right? What's your name? Hassan.
So about 3 months ago, I decided that I was going to
Right. Everybody's weird.
Everyone's if I can't
It's true.
for a couple of minutes pick up on your weirdness, I don't trust you because you're kind of hiding. Right? Because we're all working. So I think that's going to help create a lot of content because I can just talk about my weirdness. I go to
Right.
things, share it, and that.
No, I think to your point, the reason why we are building a personal brand is because people trust people, not companies. We want to know who you are. We just don't want to see a company and my company is this. They want to see who's behind the brand. And I think being able to tell a story around that and then creating conversations around the different things that I think that's really important. So to your point, that you're showing them, giving them a window into who you are and however you're doing it, whether it's a lifestyle blog or whatever, is very, very important. Any other questions? Okay. Sure. So, let's see. I think, let's take, I think some of the examples that I used in workshops. I think the thing is let's say what do you do? Like, are you a startup or? So I think the thing is I can't do a whole exercise here right now, but I think what the methodology basically is identifying what key characteristics of your personal brand are, right? So those would be the 3 adjectives. So you can even take them from your personal, okay? They will have changed a little bit after you do the positioning, but I think being able to take the boundaries, so I'll use myself as an example, that might be the easiest. So my tone of voice is aggressive, but it's not obnoxious, right? So it is confident, but it is not arrogant. Okay, you see what I'm saying? So so basically, whenever I'm writing content, I want to say my content is fun, but it's I'm fun, but I'm not a party girl. Do you see what I'm saying? And so I think when I create content, I'm always sure, and that's not exactly my brand voice, but I make sure I look at that because I think until you really understand it and you have it memorized and it is visceral. I think you really need to understand and create those boundaries. Does that make more sense now when I'm? Yes, you can define, yep, you can literally say, I'm not gonna curse, I'm allowed to say, like I write, I say bitch in my articles, but I don't ever use if I'm using other curse words, I put the asterisks in it sometimes, but I think you really have to create limitations around what it is. You can be very specific like that. Some companies are, again, those are some executional mandatories. Yes, yes, I will send them to you guys. I left out the attribution for that content burger, so let me attribute that, and then I'll send that to you guys. But I really appreciate everybody coming tonight. This was really helpful. Again, this was a new format for me, so I would really appreciate it if you guys would be able to share with me